In the late 90s, there was a strange case unfolding right outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. A fundamentalist named Thomas Green had been practicing polygamy for years, and he was now telling the world all of his family's secrets. He and his family appeared on some of the most popular daytime television shows where they would answer questions and defend their lifestyle. And he believed that if people could just see what his family was all about, they would change their minds about polygamy. But instead, the world was horrified by the details surrounding the so-called marriages between Tom and his wives. And now all of the disturbing secrets of Tom Green's cult-like family were on display for the world to see. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Summer Sanchez, and on this channel we talk about crime, cults, and heinous history. So if that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you never miss an upload. So about a week ago, I was just scrolling through Reels and I came across this old documentary about a large fundamentalist clan called the Green family, and I was immediately intrigued. I couldn't believe that I had never heard of this family before because they have been all over TV. They've done lots of interviews. The leader of this family, Tom Green, was being extremely open about some very disturbing facts about his family. So that is what we are talking about today. But before we get into that story, let's go ahead and briefly talk about today's sponsor. So today is National Coffee Day, and in honor of that, I want to tell you all about my favorite coffee service, and that is Trade. Many of you have heard me gush about Trade many times on this channel, and for good reason, because Trade is an amazing service for coffee lovers like me. Trade is the #1 coffee marketplace in America, and they've managed to partner with more than 50 of the country's top independent roasters. So that means that Trade customers get the opportunity to try out coffees from places they probably wouldn't have without this service. And you also get the added bonus of knowing that you are supporting small businesses. Trade will match you with the perfect coffee, and everything is roasted to order and shipped out within 48 hours. So it always arrives on your doorstep very fresh. They offer over 450 different coffees, so there's something for everyone, whether you prefer espressos, cold brew, medium roast, light roast, dark roast. No matter how you like your coffee at home, Trade is going to have something that's perfect for you. One of my favorite things to do when I travel is to try out the local coffee shops, and when I get a delivery from Trade, I kind of have that same feeling, like I'm getting to try out something from far away, something unique. Today I'm brewing Flatlander from PT's Coffee out of Kansas. I've tried the cold brew from this brand, but this specific one is new to me. This one just arrived on the 24th, and as you can see, the tag shows that it was roasted on September 19th, so as always, it arrived super fresh. This one is a medium roast with notes of bittersweet chocolate, tangerine, and roasted almonds, and it smells absolutely amazing. And in honor of National Coffee Day, I'm going to be a little extra and add some foam and some nutmeg and cinnamon. This is delicious, and it's the perfect combination for fall. Trade has made over 435,000 perfect coffee matches and counting. And if for some reason you aren't happy with your first coffee, they'll replace it for you absolutely free. So if you love coffee and you love trying new things, give Trade a try. I promise you won't be disappointed. And you can go to drinktrade.com/summer to get your subscription started, and you'll get your first bag of coffee for free. A big thank you to Trade for the continued support on this channel and for keeping me stocked with delicious coffee. And now let's get into the case. Thomas Arthur Green was born on June 9th, 1948, and he grew up right outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, and he was the fourth of 6 children. His family were members of the LDS Church. They were Mormons, and growing up, Tom was very interested in the Mormon religion, and he was specifically interested about the history of the religion, and he would often go and scour the church archives. He started reading all about the church's history with polygamy, and he was fascinated by the idea of plural marriage. Now, the mainstream LDS Church does not support polygamy, and you can actually be excommunicated from the church if you are caught practicing polygamy. So for a while, Tom just kept this fascination to himself. And in 1970, at the age of 22, Tom married a woman named Linda Penman, and for about 10 years, they lived a pretty typical monogamous lifestyle, and they had 3 kids together, and they sort of just blended right in with the other members of the LDS Church. But Tom's fascination with polygamy never went away. In fact, it just grew and grew over the years, and eventually he came to the conclusion that he wanted to live that lifestyle. He claimed that God was telling him that he should become a polygamist. And so he decided to confess to his wife this deep, dark secret that he had been harboring since he was a kid, and he was hoping that she would be open to the idea. Tom has actually referred to this as his coming out of the closet moment. So he finally confesses to his wife. He does not get the reaction that he was hoping for. She is not down for plural marriage. The church quickly found out about it, and they immediately kicked Tom out of the church, and they told his current wife that she should leave him. And she did leave him, and she took their 3 children with her, and she got out of there, which is actually a really smart thing because the whole situation becomes very disturbing very fast. So by 1984, Tom is divorced. He has been excommunicated from the LDS Church, and he has lived living this like secret underground life, trying desperately to find some women to marry. He had managed to make some friends in the underground polygamous world. There were actually several large polygamous groups or clans living in seclusion in Utah. They lived their lives completely cut off from everyone else, just trying to ensure that their lifestyle remained a secret. And so these underground polygamists became Tom's new friends. One notable fundamentalist who really took Tom under his wing was a man named Ross Wesley LeBaron. And if you've ever done any research into the fundamentalist Mormons, you've heard the last name LeBaron and you've heard of the Church of the Firstborn. Ross LeBaron was disgusting. He believed in keeping a pure bloodline, and he often said that incest was a step up from polygamy and it was ordered by God. He would marry off 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds to much, much older men within their sect, and he spent years abusing and impregnating girls who were related to him. In fact, he fathered at least 4 children with one of his daughters in order to keep their bloodline pure. Some of Ross's sons later spoke out against him. They had escaped the cult and they were worried about their sisters who were still living with their father. They somehow managed to obtain some DNA from the kids that they believed Ross had fathered with their sister, and it was confirmed that he was the father.
My dad has severely damaged the lives of my brothers and sisters for his own self-delusional, egotistical, and religious motives.
His name is Elon LeBaron. His family, one of the most powerful and prominent in the often shadowy world of American polygamy. And one of his uncles, a notorious convicted killer named Ervil LeBaron, who died locked up serving a life sentence in a Utah state prison.
We basically know that my dad is impregnating and having children with my sister.
A 65-year-old retired businessman named Ross LeBaron is a believer in a fundamentalist theory sometimes referred to as the pure seed doctrine. That is, that the family's bloodline is special in the eyes of God, and that the practice of inbreeding is often employed to help maintain its purity. The brothers allege their father, in pursuit of the pure seed theology, may have fathered as many as 4 children with one of his own daughters. Have you impregnated your daughters? Absolutely not. That's right. Ross LeBaron acknowledged that he might be the father of his daughter's children, but he then laid responsibility on his now dead wife Diana, whom he said, unbeknownst to him, may have collected his semen and distributed it to his daughters for the purpose of artificial insemination.
Is inbreeding being practiced here in your family?
That's, whether we choose to engage in that is a private matter. But I personally believe that a combination of outmarrying for genetic diversity and intermarrying to fix beneficial traits can be beneficial for the right individuals.
These are the types of people that Tom was associating with. There's a lot more to the LeBaron story. It's like riddled with incest and abuse and even murder. I could do several videos on them actually. But all of that to say, these are the types of vile, dangerous religious fanatics that Tom was now associating with. He developed such a close relationship with Ross LeBaron that Tom actually considered Ross his adopted father. So Tom is making these terrible connections. He's fully converted to this fundamentalist, polygamous lifestyle, and now he was eager to find himself some wives and start having a bunch of babies. His underground polygamous friends would invite him over for dinners and they would have like picnics and stuff. And during these get-togethers, they would marry off their daughters to different families. So most of Tom's wives were born into families where polygamy was normal. And so this made them much easier for Tom to manipulate because this was the lifestyle that they knew. They had been groomed to do this from birth. So in 1984, Tom meets his first polygamous wife, whose name is Beth Cook. And Beth was actually 4 years older than Tom. She was 40 and he was 36. So at this point, nothing really sinister has happened. Beth is a consenting adult, albeit likely very brainwashed, but legally nothing nefarious has happened. But that very quickly changes. So Beth came from a polygamous background. Her family had practiced polygamy for over a century. Her first husband had 4 wives and 15 children total. I tried to find out why Beth was single at this point since she was married before Tom, but I couldn't find anything. Now, before we really get into all of the wives, I should mention that Tom had a rule when it came to his potential wives, and that was any potential wife had to propose to him. And he would use this little rule later as a way to try and prove to the legal system and the media and to the wives themselves that they actually had a say in any of this. So Beth asked Tom to marry her. He accepted and they got married. Now, when Beth entered into the marriage, she brought one of her children with her, a 13-year-old daughter named Linda Coons. And this is where things take a very disturbing turn because Tom immediately started grooming his 13-year-old stepdaughter and the abuse began right away. And Linda did not see this as abuse. She thought that this was love, that this was just something normal that was supposed to happen. And so eventually she proposed to Tom with her mother Beth's blessing. So he has now married his own stepdaughter. Linda very quickly gets pregnant at only 13 years old and Tom is 36. And Linda and Beth are now not only mother and daughter, they are now also sister wives. Linda had a baby boy that she named Melvin, and I'm not going to go through all of the births individually because there's like over 30 kids by the end of all this, but Melvin's birth in particular is very important to note, and we will come back to that later. During this time, Tom had a very close friend named Mel Paulson, and Mel was interviewed when this case broke, and the interviewer asked him how he felt about his good friend Tom marrying a child, and his response is so gross.
I will remember always the day that Tom came to me and said, "I want to marry this girl." And I thought, get real, Tom. She's just a kid. Although Linda was and is very mature for her age.
So a couple of years go by and a 15-year-old girl named Shirley Beagley enters the story. And I'm really sorry, everyone is related in this story, so it gets a little confusing, so just stay with me. So Shirley Beagley is the cousin of Linda. Shirley's mom and Beth, the first plural wife, they are sisters. So Shirley moves in with Tom, Beth, and Linda, and at first she's just there to help out around the house. She and Linda become very, very close, and Shirley helps her with stuff like, the chores, taking care of the kids. And of course, Tom is a predator, so he couldn't help himself. He sees a young, teenage, vulnerable girl around his house, and the grooming and abuse started immediately. And soon, 15-year-old Shirley asked Tom to marry her as well, and they had a spiritual ceremony. So now Tom is married to Beth, her now 15-year-old daughter Linda, which is Tom's stepdaughter, and now Linda's 15-year-old cousin Shirley. And then he decides to just go ahead and marry Shirley's mother too. Remember, Shirley's mother, whose name is June, she is sisters with Beth. So Tom is now married to two sets of mothers and daughters, and the mothers are also sisters. According to June, she first met Tom when her sister Beth brought him down to meet her family, and she started falling in love with him instantly.
My older sister was married to Tom, and she brought him down to meet us. Things just went from there.
June had been married before, but she had recently split from her husband, and again, I don't know why. June was in a polygamous relationship with her first husband. Her first husband actually had more than 60 children, so Shirley was one of 60 kids. So when June moved in with Tom and the others, she brought another daughter with her, and this daughter's name is Leanne Beagley. Leanne was only 13 years old, and we know that this is not a good situation because Tom is a pedophile, and the abuse of Leanne began as soon as she moved into the house. But this time things didn't go as Tom planned, at least at first. Leanne knew what Tom was doing wasn't right, and so she left the home and she told an adult what was happening to her. Charges were eventually filed against Tom, but unfortunately Leanne ended up withdrawing the allegations. She told everyone that she had made it all up. She said that she just missed her dad and she lied about Tom in order to get back to her father. But based on what we all know, I highly doubt that that was the case. I believe that he was abusing Leanne in some way. And more proof of that is right after the allegations were dropped, Leanne became one of Tom's wives at only 14 years old.
I met Tom when my mother moved to Salt Lake and married Tom.
So you were Tom's stepdaughter?
Yes. I didn't see him as a father figure for very long. I think I fell in love with him right away.
Tom's next victim was a girl named Carrie Bjorkman. Carrie had known Tom for a long time because Tom was good friends with her father, so she grew up around him, which means that Tom had known Carrie since she was little. Then one day, Tom asked Carrie to go with him and his family on a trip to New York so that she could help babysit the children, and it was on that trip that Tom made his move on Carrie. He asked this child if she had a crush on him, and if she did, she needed to make it known.
He let me know that he was serious, and if I was serious, then I needed to let him know. And so I told him, yes, I want to marry you. I want to be your wife. From the time that we first kissed till the time we were married, it was about 2 days.
These children that he was marrying, they didn't know anything about sex. They knew that that's how babies were made, but they didn't understand like the reproductive system or anything. Like they didn't understand really how it all worked. They were very sheltered and they were so young, so they didn't know what was going on.
So he taught me and explained things and how it works, actually. Like where the uterus is, where the ovaries are, and would explain, just explain to me the reproductive system of the female.
Now, Tom at this point would have been in his 40s and Carrie was like 14 or 15 years old. And now we have one more wife to introduce, and that is Carrie's younger sister, Hannah. So after Carrie and Tom had their little wedding ceremony, his family and her family got together and had a reception. Can you imagine showing up to a wedding and a 40-something-year-old man is marrying a child? But during the reception, Carrie told her younger sister, Hannah, that she wanted Hannah to marry Tom too. And so that night when they were driving home from the reception, Carrie told Hannah to go sit in the back seat with Tom so they could become better acquainted. Hannah and Tom started talking and she told him that she loved his eyes and she wanted her children to have eyes just like his.
Carrie wanted me to marry Tom too, until she says, well, why don't you sit in the back seat with Hannah? Tom and I sit in the back seat. And we were sitting in the back seat and it just came up. I was looking at his eyes and I just loved his eyes. And I said, I want my children to have eyes like yours. And he says, I know how we can make that possible.
And just a few weeks after that conversation, Hannah became another one of Tom's wives. Okay, so just to recap before we move on, Tom's wives consist of 2 mother-daughter teams, Beth and her daughter Linda, who is also Tom's stepdaughter. And then we have June and 2 of her daughters, Shirley and Leanne is also Tom's stepdaughter. And then there is Carrie and Hannah, who are also sisters. There were at least 2 other wives or victims over the years. A woman named Allison Ryan was only 16 when she married Tom in 1989. Thankfully, she got out of the relationship pretty early on, but not before Tom allegedly assaulted her 12-year-old little sister, Andrea, because no little girls were ever safe around Tom. Beth, the first plural wife, she does leave the family at some point as well. I'm just not sure when. And since Beth and Allison left the family, it's like they never existed at all. In the interviews and the documentaries, the family never mentions them once. It's like they were never there. In fact, I only found out about Allison when I was digging through old newspaper articles and I just happened to see some quotes from her. After Beth left, Linda became the head wife, and she is referred to as wife number 1 when she was actually plural wife number 2. So it's like Beth was never there. Tom, of course, wouldn't mention Beth and Allison because it wouldn't fit his narrative that polygamy is like the best way to live and everyone is so happy all the time. It would start to raise questions, and Tom didn't want that. So at first, the family lived in a trailer park in a city called Sandy, Utah until 1995. Tom claimed that they were chased out of that trailer park when the neighbors found out about their religious lifestyle, which actually probably translates to the neighbors found out that their neighbor was marrying children and they didn't like that. So they were told to leave the trailer park and they had to find another place to live. Tom wanted to find a place that was large enough for the growing family and something secluded. So in 1997, they settled onto 15 acres of land in Utah's West Desert. They moved several trailer homes onto the property. I don't know where they got these trailers. I don't know how they got the money for these trailers. Somehow they acquired several old trailers and they moved them onto this property and they called their little settlement Greenhaven. And this property was in the middle of nowhere. It literally looks like they just dropped some trailers in the middle of the desert and this is where they all lived. The family lived in poverty. They weren't making much money. Tom did not work aside from selling some magazine subscriptions for a pro-polygamous publication. He would pack up some of his wives and some of the children and they would drive into Salt Lake City and they would go door to door asking people to subscribe to their magazine. And as you can imagine, they did not make much money from that. And the rest of the money that they had came from welfare services. Now, by this point, there were a lot of children. I think in the end, there's like 34 kids.
Okay, Mel, Chris, John, Bill, Hiram, Mindy, Sierra, Kelly, Joseph, Lauren, me, Bonnie, Sam, Philip, Lonnie, Emerald, Wesley, Becky, and Sharon, Elizabeth, Melanie, Brigham, Hunter, Benjamin, Rosie, Richard, Teddy, Thomas, and Mary Jane. I think it's over 30 or 30. I don't know. All I know is that it's a lot of children.
Each wife had her own trailer, and Tom had his own trailer, and since Linda was the head wife, she would make the schedule for which wife spent the night with Tom each night.
Each of Tom's wives have a trailer where they have a bedroom in it, and this is where mine is. This is a kitchen, which is going to be turned into a walk-in closet, and we'll put up a wall, and it'll isolate itself from my bedroom, which is right here, and it used to be a living room. It's now my large bedroom. This is where I spend my evenings when I'm not with Tom.
This room is my bedroom, and I spend all my nights here. Each wife comes here according to their own schedule and spends their time with me. The only furniture I really have in here is my armoire. You may notice there's 7 drawers, so there's room for 2 more wives there.
The women would plan to get pregnant around the same time so they could have like groups of kids born very close in age. They would have these clusters of kids born super close together, and the first group of kids was called the A team, then the next group would be the B team, and so on. They went all the way up to at least an E team, maybe even an F team, and each team had like between 4 to 6 kids. June and Shirley, one of the mother-daughter sets, they actually got pregnant at the same time, and they ended up having their babies on the same day. They gave birth right there at Greenhaven, and June had her baby in the morning, and then she just got up, and Shirley laid down in that same spot and had her baby that afternoon.
I had my baby in the morning, and she had hers in the evening, and I just moved over. She had hers in the same spot I had mine.
They were brothers to themselves, and they were sons to us. Her child was my brother, and my child was her grandson.
June's son was named Sam, and he was born with Down syndrome, and Shirley's son was Jerry. And in the late 90s, tragedy struck the family one night. At the time, Shirley was pregnant with twins, and she was due any day, and so she and Tom packed up and they headed closer to town just in case she went into labor. I guess since she was having twins, she was going to give birth in a hospital this time, and while they were gone, one of the trailers caught on fire. The other wives managed to get all of the kids out except for 3-year-old Jerry. Jerry got trapped inside of the trailer, and sadly, he did not make it out alive. This was obviously a devastating blow to the family. They were not only dealing with the very painful loss of Jerry, but they had also lost one of their main living spaces, and they needed all of the space they could get. So they had to just pick up the pieces and put everything back together and rebuild what they had lost. Now, I mentioned that Tom was part of the underground secret polygamous world, and I also mentioned that these underground groups try their best to completely stay out of sight. But after a while, Tom decided that he was going to take a different approach. He was going to do something that probably no other polygamous sect had ever done before. He was going to voluntarily step into the spotlight. His thought was that if he could just show the world what an amazing life he and his family had and how much they loved each other, then maybe the world would soften to the idea of polygamy. And if this happened, he and his family, along with the more than 50,000 other practicing polygamists in the state of Utah, could finally come out of hiding. He started going on like a media tour. He appeared on Sally Jesse Raphael, which was a very popular talk show back in the 90s. He went on Jerry Springer.
She's 14.
You know, how much education does a person have to have before they're ready to find the person that they're going to be with for the rest of their life?
Oh, gosh!
In our society in America, half of the marriages end in divorce. Now, are those people 14 when they get married? My question, Jerry, is if all this waiting is so effective, why aren't the marriages more successful in America?
There are all kinds of reasons marriages don't work. Most of the wives that you have, you always married them when they were still children. You don't wait for a grown adult to come and say, this is a great idea. You marry them when your other wife was 14 or 15 too, wasn't she? Mm-hmm. So you're always taking children. You know what? If I take a 14-year-old kid, I can convince that kid of anything and say, hey, you know what? If you get to see me once every 2 months, that's happiness. And if that's all the kid knows, the kid will believe that's happiness.
He and his wives even appeared on Judge Judy. He was going up against an anti-polygamous group called the Tapestry Against Polygamy, founded by women who had escaped plural marriages.
Tell me how many of your children, according to you, are subsidized by welfare or food stamps?
Some of my children do receive some benefits from the government, and our income level qualifies for that. 1 in 10 families in the United States receives governmental assistance for their children.
How many men have 20 children and 7 wives, sir? Absolutely right.
How many men have children with women that they don't take care of and they don't claim? How many young
those women have to go be on assistance also?
How many young teenage girls go out there just to get pregnant and to figure, oh, well,
The government will pay for it. I'm not going to have a father for my kids or anything like
Well, what
that.
do you
but
think?
The government will be there for me.
Do
I'm
you
going
want
to
a
go get
response?
pregnant.
Do you want a response to that? This is an intelligent man, and this intelligent man has chosen a lifestyle that he knows is against the civil law. He maintains a household with 7 people who he referred to in a sworn complaint as wife. He makes babies, 20 of them, and he can't afford to take care of them. And he doesn't say to himself, I have enough children, I can't take care of them all.
Hey, Judy?
Yes?
If God came and told you to do something, and
Yes.
the government of the United States told you to do something else, which would you do?
Let me explain something to you. What's talking to Mr. Green is not God. What's talking to him is down a little bit lower. This case is over.
He also started taking part in documentaries, which you have seen clips of throughout this video. And during these interviews, he would say the most vile things. One idea that he talked about a lot was that if God didn't want young girls to get married and have babies, then he wouldn't have given them the ability to get pregnant so young.
For about 95% of the recorded history of man, girls got married when they were ready to have babies physically. I think God had a design there. And I think if it's a mistake for a girl to get married when she's able to conceive children, then the mistake is God's for making them able to be mothers long before they were ready. It's not God who made them physically able to have children before they were mentally able to handle it that's at fault. It's our societies, our Western societies, that stopped preparing young men and women for the responsibilities of a family and began shifting that to preparing them to go to work. The time may come when I have a wife that's younger than the children that we have here.
Basically what he's saying is as soon as a girl has her first period, she should be deemed old enough to get married and start having babies. And it's crazy because it's like he really thinks that he's making a point and he's got like these mind-blowing ideas, and it's like he doesn't understand how disgusting he sounds. Tom was using religion to hide behind the fact that he is a pedophile. That is basically the gist of this story. In one of the documentaries, Melvin, Linda's oldest, he's talking to a reporter and she's asking him about girls. Like, does he have a girlfriend? What's her name? And Melvin says, yes, you know, I have this girl that I really like. Her name is Candace.
Yeah, she's absolutely gorgeous. She's very smart, and I really think she likes me. I only got this picture. She gave it to me. Her name's Candace.
And he's telling the reporter about how much he likes Candace and how much she likes him. They're showing footage of Candace at Greenhaven hanging out with Melvin. They're playing cards. She's being a little flirty with him. It's like this cute little moment between 2 teenagers. And then you later find out that Candace is actually only at Greenhaven in the first place because Tom has his eye on her to become another one of his wives.
This is my courting shirt. I bought it 2 weeks ago so that when Candace comes to visit, I could look nice. My wives all told me, get something nice so that you'll make an impression. But Candace's father is my adopted son. It's a religious relationship that we have. And though we've known Candace since she was young, after she turned 16, that she began to show an interest in the family in a different way than she had before. She's begun to flirt with me a little, and it's kind of fun.
Why aren't you jealous?
Well, because it's what Tom wants. And what he wants is what I want.
And the other wives are like giving him advice on how to win her over. They're telling him what to wear. They are talking to her. They're like filling her out to try to see if she would be a good fit for the family. It's like an audition. And this girl is only 16, and you can tell that she is feeling very awkward and very uncomfortable with the whole situation.
I'm Candace McKinley, and I live in Manti, that's central Utah. And I have 13 brothers and sisters. And I'm 16.
Tom is literally trying to steal his son's girlfriend. And the fact that Melvin and Candace like each other is not a secret either. Everyone knows it, but no one seems to care about this kid's feelings or what Candace wants in this scenario.
Do you worry that his heart will be broken?
Yes, but I think that if he loved her enough that he would want her to do what she wanted and be happy.
It's just so unbelievably messed up. Tom has just created this twisted world where he is at the center of everything. It truly is a cult. And then in 1999, Tom and his family appeared on an episode of Dateline. And this particular interview would be Tom's downfall. Tom had been doing interviews to advocate for this lifestyle for years at this point, but somehow it hadn't attracted attention from the law. But everything changed with that single Dateline interview. In the interview, Tom is doing what he's been doing. He's telling all of the dirty family secrets. He's talking about the ages of the victims when he married them. He's talking about how they're all related. And this Dateline segment caught the attention of the county prosecutor. He had this man in his county admitting to all of these illegal things. And so the prosecutor, who was David Levitt, he started looking into Tom's background. And during his investigation, he came across Melvin's birth certificate. The ages of both the mother and the father at the time of the baby's birth is always listed on the birth certificate. And they noticed that Linda was 14 years old at the time of Melvin's birth. Apparently back then, as long as you had parental consent, you could get married at like 14 years old. Linda, of course, did have her parents' approval, but the problem was that Melvin's birth certificate showed that Linda had just turned 14, maybe 4 months before Melvin's birth, which meant that she was only 13 years old when Melvin was conceived. And that would be classified as a sex crime against a child. The prosecutor went after him for bigamy and criminal non-support at first while they built up more evidence in the child assault case involving Linda. This became worldwide news, and Tom was like using the courtroom as his own little theater. But in May of 2001, Tom was found guilty on the bigamy charges and the criminal non-support. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and he was ordered to pay $78,000 back to the state for welfare assistance that he and his family had been provided over the years. And the following year, the child assault charges were officially filed against him. He ended up being sentenced to another 5 years for that charge. Allison, the 16-year-old wife who left the family years earlier, she and her sister, the one that Tom had abused at the age of only 12 years old, they both showed up to the sentencing. And Allison told a reporter that she was elated over the guilty verdict and that Tom's performance in the courtroom has been Oscar-winning. She also said, "He makes me sick. I mean, I was 16 and he was 45. There's no excuse." Their brother was also there for support, and he said, "This guy says he believes in plural marriage, but he just hides behind that belief to cover up the fact that he is a pedophile." Agreed. Right before he went to prison, he and his wives tried to get pregnant just in case he never made it back out. Tom wanted to make sure that he had one last team of babies, and so 5 more babies were actually born right after he was sent to prison. Tom only ended up serving a total of 6 years. He was released on parole in 2007. By that time, Leanne had taken her 5 kids and left. She even filed a restraining order against Tom, which I absolutely love. In some of the interviews, Leanne came across as the most aggressively defensive over Tom and polygamy in general. You can see that in some of the Judge Judy clips.
How many young teenage girls go out there just to get pregnant and to figure, oh, well, the government will pay for it? If God came and told you to do something, and the government of the United States told you to do something else, which would you do? We are a family. We're here because we want children, okay? We believe that we're doing what God wants us to do.
So it's amazing that she was able to pull herself and her children out of that messed up world and escape Greenhaven. Right before Tom was released from prison, one of his sons, William Green, was arrested for the rape of a 13-year-old child. He met the girl on MySpace and they started chatting. They eventually met up and William assaulted her on at least 2 separate occasions. I couldn't find any more details on that. Following Tom's release, he sort of positioned himself in the fundamentalist world as a sort of martyr for the polygamous movement, like he had done this really amazing thing and he should be revered for this ultimate sacrifice of serving time in prison. He became closely affiliated with a group called the Kingston Group, also known as the Order. They are another crazy group of fundamentalists who practice incest. They preach the pure bloodline doctrine, and they force underage marriages between girls and old men. So Tom had not changed one bit. He was still affiliating with the exact same people. Thomas Arthur Green died on February 28th, 2021 from COVID pneumonia at the age of 72. At the time of his death, only 3 of his wives were still remaining, and that was Linda, Shirley, and Carrie. Unfortunately, it's been difficult to find out where everyone is today. The only information that I could find on Linda, Shirley, and Carrie was from a Reddit post, so I'm not even sure how accurate that is. But the user said that after Tom died, the women were married off to one of the Kingstons. And as I mentioned, Leanne did leave the family soon after Tom's arrest, and she got that restraining order. And I did manage to find her on Instagram, and her transformation is insane. She's now a very successful photographer, and she specializes in boudoir sessions, and she does amazing work. On her website, she writes about empowering women and being confident and being yourself. And I'm just genuinely thrilled that she got away when she did. And she is now living her life on her own terms. Hannah Bjorkman also left Greenhaven in 2012. She went to college. She became a family nurse practitioner. She got remarried, and she actually just wrote a book that will be launching on October 3rd, so just a few days from now. The book is called Give Yourself Permission: Overcoming Female Oppression. And I really wish I would have known about this book before I started my research. I would have waited to launch this video until after I read her book, but I found out too late. I'm sure there is a lot of detail and perspective from the eyes of someone who was consumed by this predatory world. And finally coming out of that and living a free life has to be an amazing story. So if you're interested in hearing about Hannah's journey, go check out her book after it launches on October 3rd. It will be available on Amazon, and I will definitely be ordering a copy. I just thought the story was so crazy after watching that documentary, and I just had to talk about it. I'm eager to read the comments on this video. I'm sure you all will have a lot to say about this one. Also, before I go, I want to mention that I have a ton of content planned for October. Starting on the Sunday before Halloween, I'll be releasing one new video every single day leading up to Halloween Day. So that will be 5 uploads in a row. I'll have one other video also going live earlier in the month of October, and then the rest of the month I'll be working on that 5-day lineup. And it'll be a good mix of like creepy stories, true crime, and heinous history. So be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll know when those videos go live. Don't forget to check out the description box for the link, or go to drinktrade.com/summer to get your trade subscription started, and you'll get your first bag of coffee for free. And as always, I appreciate each and every one of you for watching, and I will see you next time.